All right, thanks Julius. That's a tough gig to follow on from. Look, thanks everyone for coming in today. It's really good to see such a good turnout from industry. I'm not really going to give you anything new. All right, so from a performance standards perspective, it's not necessarily new, but what we want to focus on is what the requirements actually are. So on your tables, there are some question sets. So if you can please have a look at those, and as we go through the presentation, please be honest with it. It's for us to get a bit of data around what it is you are actually seeing. Are you seeing improvement in safety since the WHS? Do you have your mine safety management system in place? Do you actually undertake performance standards? Do you have critical controls? Really simple. I'm not going to go through them as we go through, but what it forms for us is it might give us some priority areas to actually look at if you don't have these things in place. Or we can maybe be able to provide some support when we're actually on site and give you some information. So, performance standards. We've seen today from guest speakers and that the requirement for performance standards are certainly in the critical control space. But from a legislative perspective, it's a requirement. It does make good business sense to actually have performance standards in place because it gives you a measure of how your systems are actually working. So, back to basics, mine safety management system is the primary means to provide processes and methods of ensuring that you've actually got your systems in place. It shows us how well your mine's actually operating. It's the systems for which you need to have in place to ensure that and the best way to describe it is it's your safe system of work. So that's what we need for you to have in place. For your mine safety management system, you need to ensure that it's effective. One of these things is obviously performance standards. How do you demonstrate that it is actually an effective process? I'm sure for some in the room, the mine safety management system was developed from the original safety plan that you had in place, and it's probably sitting on the desk behind your shelf and it's a document. That's not what was intended to be. It's a system of work. It's a development of all your different processes. So some of your processes, your policy for instance, if you've got no changes in your organisation, your policy doesn't need to be changed. But you just need to make sure it's there. That's your performance standard. It's in place. So you don't need to make a big deal out of it. The system for auditing the effectiveness of the mine safety management system, again, that's from the regulations, that's a requirement. You need to make sure you've got your audit process. Now, here's one I prepared earlier. Yep, we've now got that in for you today to help you show that your mine safety management system is in place, that it is effective. You can actually measure yourself with some of the material that we've actually developed. As Tyler alluded this morning, we're now at the 3-year mark for your mine safety management system. So, we had your transitional arrangements for your mine safety management system. You had to develop it, 1 year. Implement, 1 year. Now we're a couple of years down the track. This next 12 months should be your actual review period. This is where we as inspectors will be certainly coming to site to ask you how you're actually doing that review. What does that actually look like? What are your performance standards? How are you performing? We need to see that in place. Now, does it mean every aspect of your organisation needs to be reviewed from your mine safety management system? If you do your audit and there's no change, you've done the review. So again, it doesn't need to be war and peace, it doesn't need to be big, but you do need to be able to demonstrate how you actually do it. The other aspects we've got for revision is around if you have an incident, if there's a request, if we don't believe an element of your mine safety management system is effective, we can ask for it to be reviewed. So there's more than just the 3 years. If you are a new operation or you're about to start a new operation, then it must be reviewed within the first 12 months. One of the things I wanted to go through is around the duty. So for the people in this room, there's a requirement to eliminate the risks so far as reasonably practical, and if not, minimise those risks. So when we start talking controls, this is where we want to make sure controls are effective. What is reasonably practicable? Again, from the legislation, you need to take in some factors as to what is practicable for when you actually implement your controls. And these people have the duty to actually ensure that those controls are in place and effective. So your PCBE, so that's your mine operator, yep, that's who we work for, or who you work for. One of the questions on your table is the person with management control. Who is the person with management control? So for some of you in this room, you will be the person with management and control. For certain elements of your organisation, if you are in control of plant, for instance, you may well be the person with management and control. So you have a duty. So it's something you need to be aware of, that it's not just the mine operator, that there are elements within the Act that do actually pertain to someone that's got control. So a performance standard may be defined as a target or required level of performance for particular safety matters and the measurement for determining whether it is achieved. Really simple. Not going to explain much more than that. It needs to be part of your mine safety management system. Measures the effectiveness of your systems, and depending on the aspect of the work health and safety performance you're measuring, it may, you may require some historical data, whether you're compliant with the legislation. So there are certainly elements within your performance standards that you need to have to ensure that you are compliant. The visual commitment to your policies, you need to be able to demonstrate that if you've written something down that this is what you're going to do, you need to be able to show that you're actually doing it. Again, that's your performance standard. And this is where it's written in the legislation. So under 623, you must have a performance standard. This is where I'm not certainly going to tell you how to do a performance standard or write it, but for us as part of the regulation, we regulate this, we need to make sure you've got it in place. The last one there, a system of auditing the effectiveness of the mine safety management system against the performance standards. So again, you need to make sure that you've got this process in place. So the performance standard may be designed to either measure the sections of or the entire mine safety management system. So when we look at the document that we've provided to you today, you can take it as one element or you can utilise it for the entire system. For a small mine operation, it's going to be a real simple document for you to review or system to review because you won't have a lot. For a larger organisation where you've got thousands of documents, yeah, it might take a little bit to break it down into chunk sizes to be able to do that auditing process, do that review. So here's a few examples of what we would expect to see from an actual performance standard. Your commitment. So this is your policy. You should have something in place. So is it signed by the most recent senior person on site? Is there a reporting structure through to the site senior executive or management? How many people are actually trained in HSR, health and safety rep? How many do you have? Do you have safety meetings? Do you have a safety committee? These are all going to be elements of your commitment to safety. How you rate the effectiveness of your worker participation through your WHS management. So do you have a measure of how many people attend your safety meetings? Do you have a measure of how many HSRs actually attend your safety meetings? For smaller organisations, you may not have a HSR, but you should still have a measure of your safety meetings. How do you conduct safety discussions? Allow people to raise safety information. Planning process. Are your operating plans and procedures developed and are they relevant? You know, as an inspector, one of the things I really get disappointed with when I go onto a site and I can see a very small operation with 3 or 4 people and their mine safety management system is this folder that's got 200 pages and it references plans and procedures that just have nothing to do with the site. It's got to be fit for purpose. So making sure that they're relevant is the key aspect. The extent to which an organisation requires risks to be managed using the hazard identification and risk management and control. So it's that risk management processes. Have you actually got a good, robust risk management process? Again, for smaller organisations, it's not going to need to be War and Peace. Simple RAC process, so workplace risk assessment and control. That's all you need. Yes, you'll still need, as we saw this morning from the principal mining hazard process, you'll still need to have those triggers for your major unwanted events. The extent to which the health and safety information is accessible to workers. So how do you actually communicate with workers? And again, as part of our 4 areas that we look at, when we look at worker representation and consultation, this is part of that process. And the extent to which the contractor safety management plan is evaluated against the mine safety management system. So for those that have contractors and rely heavily on contractors, there is a really strict process that you should be looking at through the regulations to ensure that your actual contractor's safety management plan is aligned with the mine safety management system, and that there is actually a formal handover and agreement process between both the contractor and the mine operator to ensure that you've evaluated it and that the contractor actually has the capacity to be able to deal with and work to your mine safety management system. So implementation, so again, I'm not focusing on lag indicators here. You can have them, but you might want to consider the percentage of work inspections conducted, the number of hazard identifications through workplace inspections, the number of high risks identified. You might want to consider the number of high controls verified. Again, lag indicators, your LTI frequency rates and the like. Yeah, they're a measure, but you should be looking at having a combination of both positive indicators as well as lag indicators. Percentage of planned management visits conducted, percentage of worker competency compliance and positions filled against statutory positions. So one of the key things from a statutory positions perspective is ensuring that you've actually got the right people in the statutory positions. Making sure those people are appointed, they're trained, they're competent. Measurement and evaluation. So to the extent of the work health and safety exposure monitoring is undertaken and the records and are maintained and evaluated. So when we talk about health monitoring, dust exposures, welding exposures, it's about making sure you've got those within your health management plan and they're actually doing what you say you're going to do. The extent to which accident and incident records are maintained and evaluated. So too often we see investigations. There's an investigation and there's an action, but there's no actual follow-up to ensure that the action is actually effective. If it was effective, you wouldn't have repeat hazards. We see repeat hazards all the time. So you need to make sure that your investigations are actually effective. And for those that have got alarm systems and that within their operating systems, how many alarms do you actually have? So if you have trigger action and response plans for your critical risks, what are those triggers? What are those alarms that actually are being set? Are they being investigated? Are they nuisance? And the review improvement is the percentage change from an independent or internal audit findings. So have a look at how you're actually improving with these inspections or the self-assessments, the audits. If you actually do this regularly, you will actually start seeing your improvements. You can actually have your action plan in place and you can actually start improving on your safety systems. And that ties into the level of compliance with your mine safety management system. So when we talk risk control, this is my favourite, Regulation 37. So controls are acts, objects. Yep, that's a requirement that we've seen today from a critical control perspective. But from a regulatory perspective, the controls must be effective at eliminating or reducing the risk, be designed appropriate for their purpose, suitable for the type and duration of the work, installed or put in place. They need to be set up. They need to be used correctly and they need to be maintained to ensure that they remain effective. So one regulation requires all of that. So how do you demonstrate that? Again, this is where you want performance standards. Your performance standards allows you to actually demonstrate how your controls are actually effective. And you'll notice it there, I'm not saying critical controls, because under the regulations, what we're actually asking for is all controls. You need to ensure all your controls are effective, that they're in place, that they're maintained. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. We've already seen the critical control process. Again, ICMM, we've certainly been using that same material ourselves to actually look at this. It's a very useful tool. If anyone hasn't seen it already, I'd certainly recommend you look at that to give you some guidance in how critical controls can be managed in your organisation. But if we look at controls for us within our incidents, it's not the risk assessment that's prevented the incident, it's actually the actual poor implementation or the failure of a control, or the control's just not there. So that's why it's really important to ensure that you've got the control evaluation process. So control effectiveness, how effective are your controls? You need to be, again, your performance standards will actually determine how well your controls are actually being effective. Performance indicators measure both how well the controls are performing and how well the management system is monitoring and maintaining the controls. When we look at it from a control perspective, again, straight from that Regulation 37. Is it effective? Is it designed? Is it suitable? Is it installed? Is it in place? Is it used correctly? And more importantly, is it maintained? So the performance requirements for a control, they need to be specific, measurable, appropriate and realistic. So I'll share one that I've seen recently on a site. It was for a small quarry where their control for interaction between the loader actually loading and a vehicle interaction was ensure there's enough sufficient room for the loader to operate without impacting a vehicle. It's not very specific, it's certainly not measurable, probably not appropriate, but was it realistic as well? So, probably not a critical control. So again, you need to make sure that you've got those things in place. Performance standing auditing. The Principal Mining Hazard Management Plan forms part of the Mine Safety Management System. So as such, it needs to have the auditing process, it needs to have performance standards applied to your Principal Mining Hazard Management Plan. So you need to ensure that your plans are effective. When preparing, operators should include triggers for shutdown. So again, our trigger action response plan should be part of your Principal Mining Hazard Management Plan where you need someone to take an action, they need to know when they need to take that action. So again, that's your trigger action response plan. We're utilising the word competent here. Not everyone can monitor or measure or audit processes. So people need to be competent when they're actually looking at these things. They need to know what they're looking at. They need to know what they're actually measuring against. Operators consider both internal and external audit programs for ensuring that their principal hazards are actually effectively managed. The areas that may be audited could be the hazard identification risk assessment process, your control effectiveness and verification data, incident injury data, as well as workplace inspection data. Your review process, again, it's part of the mine safety management system, so your Principal Mining Hazard Management Plans should be reviewed in line with your mine safety management system. They form part of the 3-year review. So when you're reviewing your mine safety management system, you have to review your Principal Mining Hazard Management Plan. Again, there's a lot there to review. Key one is check your controls. For some of you, you've got organisations that have been operating, I think in the room here, you've got operations that have been 30, 40, 50 years in operation. Your sites change, technology changes. So a part of your review, what was an effective control today may not be effective control tomorrow. So that's why we want the review. It may be that your 43,000 touch points can be reduced because of technology or changes in your operation. So that's why the review process is really important. I can't emphasise this enough. Trigger action response plans. Ensure people know what it is that they're actually measuring. It's integral to the Principal Mining Hazard Management Plan. If something starts to go wrong within that, you need to know what needs to be done to actually rectify it, stop it from actually occurring to the actual event. A classic example will be for an open cut with a drop-off along a haul road, your windrow. Your windrow is a critical control. how do you ensure that it's effective? How do you ensure that it's going to control a vehicle? If you increase the size of your fleet, is your same process going to be effective? But there again, from a TARP perspective, what happens when an operator identifies that there's damage to a windrow? You need to have that trigger for reporting. Any questions? Like I said, there's going to be nothing new. It was really an enforcement of what we actually do as a regulator and what we're going to be looking at when we're on site. So hopefully you get some takeaways. Please answer the questions as truthfully as you can. We will collect those at the end of the day, so don't just scribble on them. We would actually like some meaningful data to influence how we actually look at things in the future. So thanks everyone.